Okay, hello, hello. I believe that we are now live, and I want to welcome you all to the Design Pattern Create final live Q&A on Friday. I am super excited you have joined us for this week. I have had so much fun speaking with these amazing people, and we have quite a few people here for you to speak with today. So I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves and tell a little bit about who they are. And we look forward to asking them some questions and talking with them today. So, uh, Rory, do you want to take us off?
Sure. My name's Rory Duffy. I'm a Savile Row trained master tailor. I run the Handcraft Tailor Academy in Modern Ireland. We offer courses both online and in-house.
Awesome. V,
Okay, I'm going to go
you want to
ahead.
go next?
Yeah, I'll go next. So I'm V Tanner. I'm a sewing teacher and a costume maker, and I run courses online and in person in various places in and around Reading and Surrey.
I think I froze for a second. But Alexandra, do you want to go next?
I feel like everyone's very succinct on their introductions, and I'm such a waffler. But my name's Alex. I'm a professional fashion designer, pattern cutter, and creative consultant. And when I'm not helping people launch fashion brands, I am teaching at-home hobby sewists how to design, draft, and make their dream wardrobes.
Yes, I love it. And Annette.
I run Fashion Design Tribe. I'm a fashion designer and product developer. And I help, similar to Alexandra in her consulting business, I help startup brands through mentoring and courses launch their brands within fashion and textiles.
Awesome. And I'm Christina Hadley-Dyke. I teach people how to digitally pattern draft so that they can create their own amazing pieces of wearable art. And we have a few people on YouTube. Karen was with us yesterday when I was doing all the issues. But yes, Karen, we did get it fixed. Hopefully you can see it streaming live now. And welcome, Sharka. Ugh, I don't know how to pronounce your name, and I'm really sorry about that. Uh, awesome. Well, it is the final day, and I know we have some questions burning. So definitely, when you have your question, drop it in the chat. And I know I recently was talking with somebody, Rory, and they were just so interested in your experience training on Savile Row that I was just hoping you could maybe start us off by telling us a little bit more about just the outline of how you trained on Savile Row.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I started in Ireland with a third generation master tailor on the West Coast called Joseph Martin. He was a civilian and military tailor. We're still in contact. He's still going to this day. And while I was apprenticing there, I came across a magazine in his showroom. It was a Clothing World 1998 and edition, and there was an interview with a man called Philip Parker from Henry Pools, and he was the managing director there, and he was speaking about training young tailors on Savile Row. And my father brought me to London, and I got the opportunity to call into Henry Pools, and I met Philip Parker, and I asked him how would someone go about getting an apprenticeship in London. And he suggested that I try out at one of the universities, London College of Fashion or Newham College, and do a tailoring diploma, a 1 year diploma course, and then try and get an internship, and then maybe from there I could get an apprenticeship. So that's what I did. I applied to London College of Fashion. Did a 1 year diploma, and from there I managed to get in the door at Henry Pools and became a coat maker's apprentice. And I did that for 3, 4 years, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And then Annette, we did have a question. What was the steam iron that you mentioned that doesn't burn or melt anything?
That wasn't me.
Was that UV actually?
That was me.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say.
So it's the Philips Perfect Care iron, steam generator iron. So how I understand it is it's the steam itself that generates the heat that so it's not actually the sole plate that gets, obviously the sole plate gets hot, but it's not the sole plate itself getting hot that makes the pressing, it's the steam that makes it press nicely. But you know, I bought it in the end of 2018 and I've had to send it for repair because it stopped working. It's leaking water everywhere. But it can be fixed, I'm assured, by Philips. So I have organised that for today. I'm absolutely mortified because it's my favourite item.
So that just happened recently?
Yeah, it happened last night. I was going to do some ironing my sheets. I iron sheets. That's the only thing I iron other than using my iron to do dressmaking and stuff. And it was just dripping, spitting water everywhere. But otherwise, I really recommend it. Despite, you know, because what is it now? It's 7 years old. That's pretty good for an iron, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So, and it's fixable. It was quite expensive, but it's worth it because the fact that I don't need to use a pressing cloth for everything. I can just use it. There's no temperature adjustment or anything. It just knows not, well, the sole plate doesn't get that hot that it melts anything. I suppose the only thing that you can't use it on is like silk, because then silk you can't steam because of the water staining. But otherwise, everything, polyester, cotton, natural fibers, everything doesn't melt it. It's wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of those irons I want to get myself because not melting sounds like a really nice feature.
Mm.
Yeah, she says sorry. She was listening to the interviews instead of watching most of them. Not a problem. Yeah, I know you asked that in the group as well this past week, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go and relook that up so that I can help answer that as well. Awesome. Well, do you guys have any questions for each other while we're waiting for any more to come in? I do have a few more that I've been asked, but
I actually wanted to ask V if the sole of the iron, is it ceramic or is it metal, or do you know? I
Um,
think it could have been ceramic. The fact it doesn't get hot or as hot in
oh,
steam.
so I can't even, I've packed it up ready to send, so I can't even get it out to have a look. I think it's like it's got a coating on it.
Okay,
So it's not like a domestic iron, which has definitely got a metal plate. There is a coating on it,
sure.
which could be ceramic, I guess.
Yeah, it's possibly ceramic. You said it was Philips that produced
Yeah,
it. And why did you
Philips.
buy it online? Was it like Amazon purchase or?
I actually bought it direct from Philips.
All right.
I did a whole load of research on it and came across, in fact, I can't remember how I originally came across. Maybe it was an advert.
Sure.
Um,
It was 7 years ago, so we'll forgive you for not remembering.
yeah, thank you.
And is
Um,
it does it have is like the boiler compartment
always
to
the
it? And
trick
it's
is
like
remembering
hose
something from
bed or
7 years
something?
ago.
Yeah, so it's all contained in one big thing. So it's got a great big water container that's attached to the unit that has the boiler, and the iron itself is quite light, but it sits on top of that.
Right.
And then it's got the hose that connects it up to
Sure,
the
I think
rest
I
of
know. Yeah, I
the
know this
boiler
style you're
thing.
talking about. Yeah,
So it's kind of like it needs a bigger space than a regular ironing board to sit on. So I had to buy a bigger ironing board so that it could accommodate this great big base thing.
sure.
But
Before you know it, that'll be a bigger studio and then more fabrics, and then all the excuses will come in.
yes, it has already extended to more than one room now.
Needed a bigger space, okay?
And we all need a new iron, I think.
Always.
Irons are really important.
Yeah,
So,
I love how we all oh my God, I want this.
yeah, the one uniting tool, I would say. we on Savile Row we all use 12-pound dowsing irons.
Mm.
So the only place we could really see a dowsing iron now, other than on Savile Row, is they're used on pool tables. So whenever they're refelting a pool table or a snooker table, they've got a dowsing iron for that, but it's square, because it's because of the corners. But the dowsing iron they use in tailoring is like it's like a shoe, sole on it. And I remember whenever dowsing announced that they were no longer reducing the elements for these irons, and the panic that went out in the trade in London. Like, this is like the early 2000s, and tailors were panic buying as many of these elements as they could get, and the cords and that, because the cord for it, the plug end of it that goes into the iron, it's ceramic, and so they're very brittle, and yeah, people were panicking, not knowing what was the future of Savile Row tailoring going to be if we didn't have our 12-pound dowsing irons.
I've
And
never
what was
heard
the
of a
solution?
dowsing
I'm
iron.
very dying to hear.
I think I know one of the guys, the guy I trained with, Craig. I seen the post on social media where his iron, that was it. It was done, and he couldn't get a replacement for it, so he had to switch to a steam iron. So you can get steam irons, the ones with the little units, little steam units and that. So you can get one with a heavier base. You can get like a brass base for those types of steam irons, but yeah, they're switching to steam. The great thing about a dowsing is that there's an old saying in tailoring is that a good presser can fix a bad coat. What we mean by that would be, like, if you've got like a short collar, or maybe the facing's a little bit long or something like that, that you could just beat it with an iron. That's the terminology.
That's what I was taught. That is exactly what I was
Yeah,
taught.
exactly. But if you get something that's really, really hot, like that you could like fry a steak with, and has all that weight, that 12 pounds of weight. Well, obviously we use a protective. We use canvas now to protect the fabric from scorching. But if you get a lot of water on there and you put that iron on, like, you can fix an awful lot of making issues with a very heavy iron. I know I've done it myself more than once, but it is part of it's part of the trade, and it's part of the heritage of Savile Row, like these styles of irons, and tailors are very, very slow to evolve. They change their practices, and they're very attached to their tools. I mean, as an apprentice, you don't touch your master's board. Like, it's sacred. It's like an altar. You don't touch his shears, any of his tools. This is his livelihood. You don't want to be the guy holding the iron whenever the element decides it wants to burn out. After 20
I
years.
have a terrible story about a pressing experience. I very early in my experience as a student worked under a couturier called Susie Turner, and interns would come in and be taught. They probably go on a 3-week crash course of an 8-hour day where they are learning how to hand embellish and bead to the standard that's required. And an intern came in and took the hem of this wedding gown over to the iron and burnt it. And there was about 6 months of work that had to be scrapped. And that was one of my first experiences of couture. I now work in streetwear, ready to wear. I'm not to that standard at all. My essential tremors and my shakes didn't cut it for the precision.
Yeah.
But I was traumatized, right? This poor intern. I just
Yeah.
remember a little face, just how pressing. It's interesting because I think there must be a variation on all of those sayings, because my version of that was pressing can hide a multitude of sins. That's what I was always taught.
Same idea.
Same, but different. Yeah. But it's true. It's a very big cornerstone of the whole process, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's so much that gets passed down, like, other than just the making skills, like the dowsing iron, it will burn. It'll burn straight through a pair of trousers if you leave it sitting. And you have to really know the temperature control on it, because there's a separate little box that you get with it. That's the thermostat. and you know it will very easily scorch fabric. And I remember I was working, I think it was on something for myself, or it could have been a client, and I was stretching the inlay. So you know, the inlay into the waist, you really want to stretch that out so you can open the seam up. And I was stretching it on the right side, not the wrong side. Like the you know, the classic mistake of an apprentice, you know, putting the iron on the right side of the fabric. And it scorched, like it just went yellow. Like I just put the iron on, it was just this yellow streak. And I was like, oh my God, my iron's so hot. And I looked at, you know, Paul, and he was just like, go tell John Dryer. So he runs into John. I was like, John, I just burnt the fabric. And he was just like, gets the hydrogen peroxide with the use for to bleach your hair. That's what
Yeah.
we use. We get that, we dab it onto a cloth, and you dab it in, and actually it'll rub out the yellow. Like you wouldn't believe it till you'd see it. Like it just like it's like an eraser. It just rubbed
I
it
haven't
off.
tried that
It's gone.
before. It's interesting that's like that you can
Yeah.
do that. It's good
Well, it's
tip for
happened more
everyone.
than once. So
Does that have to, do you have to be on natural fabrics for that to work, right? Or would that work
well,
on?
yeah, tailoring uses wool, so
Yeah,
I
that's,
don't
I
know.
guess,
I'm not
yeah.
sure. I
I
think if it was an unnatural fabric, so if you had like, if it was polyester, it probably would melt, I
yeah.
would say. I don't know. We do use it, you know, tailoring, we use some cottons, and I would say, yeah, it's probably wool that yellows. Cotton could it burn as well? I'm not sure. Not
Yeah.
sure.
We did.
There's loads of stuff like that, like the you know, like whenever you get the blood on like white lining and stuff like that, it's like the you know, we were taught to chew basting cotton. You know, you get basting cotton, you put it in your mouth, and you chew it up, and you rub it on the blood, like the spot of blood, and it takes it out. And I was told it was, you know, it was the bleach in the basting cotton, but somebody else told me years later, said, no, it's the enzymes in your saliva that break up the blood. So we're chewing basting cotton for I could just spit out a rag and do it that way, but I think it's part of the tradition as well.
Puts
Yeah.
another spin on blood, sweat, and tears going into something, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Sleepless nights as well.
Mm.
We did have another question come in, or a couple questions. One of them is, Rory, do you have a recommendation for a beginner pattern for a first time making a tailored jacket?
Oh, if you want to buy a pattern, yes. Alan Cannon Jones is a guy. I believe he's a Savile Row trained tailor that went into education I think he was in London College of Fashion, or University of the Arts of London. I think that's the same thing. But yeah, Alan Cannon Jones produced a set of patterns for men's jackets, and he sold them through Moreplan many years ago. The last time I spoke to Alan, he did say they were still available. So you might want to do a little bit of research there. Of course, it's not a great answer. I can't just send you directly to a site, but I'd say start at Moreplan. And if you can't, I go on to LinkedIn, just hit up Alan Cannon Jones directly, and I'm sure he'd have no problem telling you where you know, where he sells his jacket patterns. He also does a pant pattern as well, and I had a look at them, and they actually are really good. Like they come in like it's a full size roll, and like it comes out in this big roll, and you roll it out, and then it's sized as well. So it's a lot like the old Vogue patterns. I know, I'm sure the Vogue probably still does those patterns, but you know, they used to come in that the Vogue patterns always came like tissue paper, whereas this actually comes on like a you know a paper with a little bit of weight to it, so it's easier to work with.
Awesome. And Alexandra, we had somebody was wondering, how do you address individual fit concerns with your students?
How
How
do
do I
I?
address individual? Well, that isn't that how long's a piece of thread? Right, okay. Give me the easy one. So if you are coming from a beginner's perspective, I go length before width. I try and remember that in terms of L comes before W in the alphabet. People have different ways of remembering that. You want your horizontal balance lines. If you are fitting anything, I go blue in the face saying this. And I know sewists quite like to jump the gun and cut final fabric, and it's a shop bought pattern, so it should fit me. If you have the patience and you really do want to refine your skill, please, please, please toile your design. And the benefit of toiling your design, if you do that in a, calico or a fabric that holds similar weight and properties to your desired final fabric, if you can transfer your horizontal balance lines onto it, so that is your bust, your waist, your hip. If you're doing a trouser, that's your knee, your thigh, your calf, whatever the more information and data you can put onto your toile, the better. You're going to be able to very quickly see where any discrepancies are. So we're going to go with length first, and then that materializes through horizontal folds. I know that doesn't quite make sense. And then width materializes if there's too much or too little through vertical. So like, I do this, if you could see me do that, that would be too wide, and that would be signs that it's too long. Where that horizontal balance line falls on you, how that pattern is drafted, the bust line might be 0.5 centimeter higher, 0.5 centimeter lower than your own bust line. Another tip I give is to try and take a photo of yourself rather than just looking in a mirror, especially because, as we know, turning around and looking at the back is just a recipe for disaster. That's going to throw off a lot of discrepancies, but it also gives us a disconnect. And I'm very clumsy with my words, but I know when we look in a mirror, we can often see a dysmorphia kind of vision of what the reality is. If you take an image of yourself, it allows you to have that level of disconnect. You can print that image out. You can use a pen and circle areas where folds are occurring. You can then start to analyze it. Again, top down, length first, then width. You want to have your horizontal balance lines parallel to the floor. You want to, if you're working with a block that hasn't got any kind of extravagant design changes, you do generally want your side seams to be perpendicular to the floor. So that is like a right angle. And it's really important to also note that when I say folds and I'm saying length and width, number one, there's a big difference between wearing ease and pattern ease. So wearing ease, this is a very oversized, I really haven't dressed up for the occasion, have I? Sorry, guys. This is a very oversized hoodie. This would be design ease, okay? It would have additional width incorporated into the pattern. That might happen if you've got something like a buffet dress or a tent dress that has, ruffles. That's going to be additional ease in terms of the design. Wearing ease, if you're talking about non-wovens, is a case of, it might be between 4 to 6 centimeters, depending, allowing you to move in the garment, okay? So if you're drafting something, you don't want it to be identical to your chest or your bust, because what's going to happen, and especially across back, if you have a look at me moving around, if that literally fits me like a glove and the fabric doesn't have any stretching, that's going to become very hard for me to actually move in it and wear it as a garment. And then finally, I just want to touch upon the fact that looking for wrinkles and drag lines, they all point to the problem, really, is a general rule of thumb. But we're not aiming for a completely smooth garment when we're moving. I think we have to remember that we live in these garments. And so if I move my arm and something wrinkles, that doesn't mean it's wrong. So try and stand still, natural posture, get rid of the ego, don't suck that stomach in, don't try and push it and bloat it out, stand as comfortably as possible. And just have a look. Are your horizontal balance lines parallel to the floor? If they're tipping like this, then we have balance issues. And it'll be able to just really help you map out any issues on the pattern, and then you can kind of work through them systematically. I'm afraid it's like tip of the iceberg, and I'm sure we have some wonderful, we've got a tailor on the call, guys. I'm sure we've got some wonderful experts who can chip in here. But it's just a case of taking it step by step. And then my final point will be, please make incremental changes, one at a time. It's really going to do you many, many favors. If you start throwing it all in and doing it all at once and you don't know why it looks better or why it looks worse, then that can really confuse your creative process. And even though it adds, I'm very passionate about falling in love with the process, because I think along my journey with working with sewists, a lot of us get very obsessed with the end result and we strive for perfection. If you don't enjoy the process, you're probably not in the right It's a long process. You're probably not in the right hobby because you have to love it. It takes reiterations, it takes multiple patterns and amendments. And just because you've bought a sewing pattern, you know, that is commercial, the sewing pattern has been designed for the masses. If you go to a high street shop and you're like, why does this not fit me? It's been designed for the masses. You cannot expect a commercial sewing pattern to fit you like a glove either. We're all going to have minor asymmetries in our bodies. There's going to be so many things that are beautiful and unique about yourself. And so as you make these pattern amendments, make a new pattern, trace off a new pattern and number them. And then if something goes wrong, or if, you know, something throws up an unexpected result, you can systematically go back step by step and then repeat the process until you're happy with the final result. I hope that was helpful in a roundabout way.
Yeah, I think it was. It's always good to hear other people's processes on fitting and everything. So we do have another question that's best tip for removing needle holes when ripping out an errant buttonhole stitching. Hole not cut yet. I'm guessing that's probably for Rory,
Yeah,
but
I
it
mean,
might
it
be for
depends on
everyone.
the fabric. The only thing you can really do with with needle holes is, well, first and foremost, try and limit the getting the holes. So change your needles regularly. We've got students here in the workshop, and when bringing a new student, I always change out all the needles and all the machines, because you know, just even just the wear of a needle will will cause it to cause more damage to the fabric. So if you're left with a needle hole, like really a needle when it hits fabric, it's actually just supposed to push the fibers out of the way. It's not really meant to break them. So if you do noticing that you are getting that a lot of wear around the hole in that, it could actually have to do with the needle itself. So you might actually be you could be using the wrong weight of needle for the fabric that you're working on. I know I have a buttonhole machine myself. I know exactly what you're talking about. It can cause a lot of scarring there. The only thing you can do is just try and steam it with an iron and like use your nail to try and close the holes. But if there's a lot of damage done to the fabric, I'm afraid there's really not much you can do.
Yeah. Can an iron fix that at all?
Well, yeah, steaming it, yeah, with
Okay.
your iron, the steaming with the iron it, and like, you know, get your nail in there and kind of rub it, try and close the holes over. But really, it's more, you got to think more preventative. You know, the one thing we'd say, like I'd always say about lining, is that, you know, lining, when you go to sew lining, that's a one-shot deal. You know, if you take out, you ever try to undo stitching and lining, because when the needle hits the lining, it's gonna break the fabric. So when you go to take it out, you're gonna be left with a scar on the lining. It gets interesting in bespoke. Like we leave inlay in our linings. Like I'm wearing a waistcoat, and we leave a lot of inlay in the lining of a waistcoat. But if a client ever came back to me with a waistcoat and wanted it let out, you know, I'd recut the back of it. I'd reline the back of it. Like I wouldn't use the inlay that's there. I wouldn't have to. I wouldn't like to see that scarring on the side of a very expensive, very expensive garment. You know, it's inlay like that is really for more the secondary market.
Yeah. Awesome. And then we got Tina asking, oh, Alexandra, can you repeat the drag lines compared to the length and the width alterations?
I feel like I should have been prepared. My mannequin's naked. Sorry about that. Could have had an example. Right, I'm going to stand up. It's not that kind of call, guys. So, if we're talking about, this is wide, this has got design ease in it, okay? When I stand, you can see that becomes vertical lines here. Now, if this was too long, say it's a pair of trousers and it was pooling at the hem, it would start going horizontal like this. So if I bunch this up and act as though that's quite a long thing, pretend my foot is here and this is a trouser. The leg, if it is too long, will start showing up horizontal lines here, like that. So vertical lines are a signal that it's too wide. And this is me referring to a block, okay? As I say, there's a complete difference in pattern ease and design ease. So if we're starting from the foundations, you just want a really well-fitting block. That would be like a basic garment with no bells and whistles, you know, fits you like a glove, and then we can elaborate it into more advanced things. And so if you're putting it on and you've got areas that are like this, that's a sign that there is too much width. And if you've got areas like that, that is a sign that that is too much length. I mean, that really is the starting point. You obviously can have diagonals. You can have, if I pull it tight, then it can be a signal of, you know, not enough width as well. So yeah, I'm sorry I don't have many visuals with me to kind of go through that, but I hope that that makes sense. Let me know if
Yeah.
I need to
I think
clarify.
it's just a matter of like also looking at your garment, right? From top to bottom and going through, like, is it pulling anywhere? Is it causing bulk? Is it causing anything? Like from top to bottom, go through it, like you said, both horizontally and vertically. If something doesn't look right, and like your oversized top supposed to be baggy, so it's supposed to have some lines, but some
Exactly.
designs shouldn't. So you have to think of like how the design is and start top, go down and figure out something looks wrong, then probably there's an issue.
And this
Yeah,
is why the horizontal balance lines are so important. If you have your chest or your bust line drawn onto the toile, and that is too high, then you know that there's not enough length. You need to lower that until the bust line hits your natural bust line. Or vice versa, if it goes below your bust line, then you know it's too much length, so you can then raise it. So it
And I
really,
love this
really is.
draw on your stuff, right?
Yeah, literally draw on it. Draw on it. Get some calico or whatever. Bed sheets. Bed sheets are really good in terms of like bang for your buck. But again, when you are toiling a design, it's really important to try and get a fabric as close in match to your final fabric as possible. There's been so many times, even now, literally again, it's part of the process. You have to enjoy the process, where I've made a pattern, made a design, toiled it up 5, 6, 7 times, done it in a final fabric. The final fabric is ever so slightly different, and I still have to make a fitting amendment because of that change. So like, don't beat yourself up if these kind of things throw up for you and like they're a little unexpected. It really is all part of the process.
Yeah, we
They
teach.
happen.
I totally
Sorry,
agree.
you,
We
Rory.
teach. Yeah, we teach in the school here. We teach a fitting course. It's menswear. I mean, it's the same. And obviously, there's probably different issues that you get with women's wear. But it's one of the things that I teach the students is if folds are present, there's an excess in length or width in the opposite direction in which the fold runs, right? So that's your folds. Then you've got creases, or you could also call it a drag, if you like, indicates a shortness in the direction of their extremity. So generally, if you've got a fold is a length issue, and a crease is generally a shortness. So that's how I try to drill that into my students. We do fittings in jackets and trousers and that, and I use the mannequin. I pattern it in different ways to show different fitting issues, like the common ones, like a squaring at the back neck, or like a an over suppressed center back neck, like two fitting issues that look almost identical on the figure. So you can see that there's a fold of fabric just right at the base of the collar, but is it too long, through the center back, or is it too narrow through the neck width? And then trying to identify between the two of those. So yeah, it's about distinguishing between, is it a fold, or is it a drag or a crease?
Yeah, I agree. And I would say I've been a garment technician for many, many years in my life prior to this. So I think also like it's so important to put it on your body. So even if you're sewing for yourself, put it on your body. And also all these drag lines and problems, if you work commercially, maybe more streetwear and like fast fashion, it happens in these big brands as well. So I think it's like you just need to realize that that is part of the process, and we won't get away from it. We do need sampling, and we do need toiles, and we need to work through it. It's not something that you can fix like this. Nothing is perfect at the first start. So I think everything is said is like so amazing. Sorry.
And it's worth noting as well, like depending how your unique journey is, you might have been sewing since you were 15 and now you literally might be 85. Your posture will change. Like fitting amendments can still change. And even on women, depending on the design, if we're talking close fitting, time of the month, things might bloat you, like your figure will change. And so it's really important to kind of check back in, measure yourself regularly, every 6 months, whatever's good for you. I mean, it's not going to be drastic. For some people, it might be. But it's just kind of something you need to constantly check in with and speak kindly to yourself about. Because again, even with professional people, it's part of the process. It happens all the time.
Absolutely. Like, I personally never use the same pattern twice. I've been making suits in the industry over 20 years, and I always hated the idea of having a wardrobe full of like blue, black, and gray suits all in the same cut, you know. So I always recut the pattern, but yeah, I always retake my measurements and I cut then according to the measurements that I have, and I'll play around the silhouette. I might make the jacket a little bit longer, I might raise the waist position. Every line is a style line. So, like it's great just to be creative and just to try something new. And, as I've got older, like, when I wrote a book on pattern drafting, I became more competent at just cutting and making the garment, particularly for yourself. I mean, you know your own body, you know your shoulder angles, you know your posture, you know how much balance you need. So you're just changing the stylistic details. So I have been caught a couple of times recently where I've just made it straight to finish, put the coat on, and realized, I don't like the silhouette. I don't like how this makes me look. It's just a little bit too short. Or the pocket could have been a half inch higher, like stuff like that sort of drives me crazy then.
And Rory's just given me a really good thought there, actually, because even measuring yourself is a really important skill to know. So like even taking your neck measurement for me, if I always refer to like when I once literally didn't continue, had a PT at the gym. That one time I thought I was healthy. They say take your neck measurement and you're actually taking your neck measurement up here. But if you're trying to take your neck measurement for clothing, we need it much
Yeah,
further down. Same with your
absolutely.
shoulder measurement. A lot of people take their shoulder measurement far too long, whereas you need to think of the shoulder seam and the sleeve head. So understanding accurate measurements before we even go into fitting amendments. I apologize if I jumped the gun, but that would actually be
Yeah.
my first step.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people put a lot of faith in measurements. I don't take a whole lot of measurements. I used to, like, I've done, I have a library full of books going back to like I suppose the late 1800s, and I've looked at all the different systems that they've used. I know obviously I'm in menswear and we make suits, and that's very different to women's wear, what you're doing, because, I'm looking at the images in the background. I can see the sort of like it's very different. It's very different way of going about it. But yeah, I use more. I started using when I went to the States was I started using head units rather than taking measurements directly, because a lot of time what you're doing on the body is you're taking a measurement over a curve and then you're applying it to a straight line. So let's say if you want to take like the natural waist, which is a depth measurement. So the natural waist is taken from the nape of the neck or the base of the collar down to your waist. So your waist is actually lower on the back than it is on the side. So you've got like the hollow of your waist on the back is actually slightly lower than your side waist. And I used to find that if I had a guy that was very erect, the measurement was actually shorter. And if I had a guy who was a bit stooped over, the measurement would end up being longer. And then I'd be measuring over the curve of the back and then applying it between 2 points on my draft. And I kept getting these waists they were just all over the shop. So it was a book that I had. It was Modern Tailor and Outfitter by A.S. Bridget or something like that. So it's a 3-volume book, but they dedicate a whole chapter to the head unit. And it's the theory goes back to the times of the Egyptians that it's been a recognized system of proportionally dissecting the human body, that each figure contains 8 equal head units. So when I brought in head units, I had a client. I went to a client in New York, and I was experimenting with, like a way of recording the measurements, and I thought it was being all fancy, and I have this like iPad, and we've got this document open, and you can just record the measurements, so within the height and the neck, and it was a great idea because it meant you wouldn't forget a measurement, if you had this, and it also looked really high tech as well back in there in the mid 2000s, and I was supposed to click save to save all the measurements, and I got home and I'm getting ready in my workshop, to start drafting this pattern, and I didn't click save, and I'd lost all his measurements. And the only thing I could remember was he was 5'9". He was like a 39 chest, I think. He had a 3-inch drop, and he was head forward posture, and that was it. That's all I had. And I used the head, I just remember this, like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know what his coat length is. I don't know his natural weight. I don't know his sleeve length. I don't know his inside leg. I didn't know anything. And I remembered this book, and I went to my library. I pulled it out, and I reread the chapter then on head units. And ever since then, I use head unit now for my sleeve length, for my coat length, for my natural waist. It can help you, give you a guide to what the inside might be. It can help you there with that, with the rise. But yeah, I used to go into fittings, and I'd find like my sleeve lengths would always come up because we used to, you take the sleeve length this way. I don't know if you guys do that. And I always, tell me where you take this measurement to. The length of the sleeve can be out by like a half inch, an inch. It's one of those things that clients pick up on really quickly is, you go into a fitting and the sleeve's too short, and they look at it and they see this sleeve's like an inch too short, and the guy starts panicking. He starts swinging and looking around, going like, if that's the problem I can see, like, what can I see? What has this guy done? And yeah, I like just that little thing of like, introducing this detail I picked up in the book, and bring it into to tailoring, how it changed the like I went into that fitting with that client with one of the best fittings that I'd ever cut, because it put everything in straight into proportion for me.
I find that fascinating, number one. So literally every day's a school day, because for a woman, would that be 7 heads high then? Because when we learn to draw
7.5.
croquis, 7.5. So when
Yeah.
we learn to draw fashion figure templates, we do it by head height.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Interesting. There we go.
There's actually a really good book you should get. There's one. It's like ladies cutting and fitting by, I think it's by F.R. Morris. The book's about this thick. I've actually read it 2 or 3 times. It's a very dry read, but it has a whole chapter just talking about the height of the neck stand, like how high you should make the neck stand. And it's really good. Now it is available on, you can buy it. It's going to cost you like 20 quid on. It's like an Apple, like an Apple book. I have an Apple version of it, an Apple, library book, digital book, whatever you call those things. Like, it's on there, and it comes up every now and again on eBay. It's a really good book for cutting all types of women's wear and all different types of systems. And there's a few others, like anything from the Tailor and Cutter Academy. There's 2 books. I actually just pulling them up here in front of me because we were talking about fitting earlier. There's The Art of Fitting Ladies' Garments, and then there's Design and Cutting of Ladies' Garments. Not for a plug, but we actually do have both of those available as a digital copy on my own bookstore. But they're a really good book. We tried to, at the school here, I buy rare books. I end up paying like often hundreds of pounds for these books, and we digitize them. We put them on our bookstore. We make them available for like, for like affordable. It's like 20 quid or something to buy one of these books. But there's books that we have up there that I know some of them spend 500 or 600 on them, and so sort of preserve them, but also to get them out there. Like getting a book for reference. You see a crease or a pull or something in a garment, be able to pull out the book and having like, oh, here's that crease, or it could be this, or it could be that. Like, they've got some it's great reference material. Like, it's just something even just to sit down and read and memorize. Like, that's how when I went to New York, I finished 7 years apprenticeship. I started selling suits to clients, and I hadn't really done any fittings. I'd cut patterns before and I'd make garments, but I'd never really stood in front of a customer and like was totally bluffing it, like, And what I was doing is just sitting down and memorizing these fitting books. So what I'm saying, if it worked for me, like it absolutely could work for you too.
Christina, I think
Christina, you're on
muted.
mute over there.
Sorry, thank you. We did have a few more questions come in. Kathleen, you're probably going to have to expand on this because she asked, is it possible when sewing for the masses, they expect us to put on masks? I'm not 100% sure what that is. So if you could expand on that, that would be great. And then we had a question for V come in that we'll have to put in the group because she had to leave early today. And then Tina said that she's currently working on her sloper dress. And then again, Kathleen asked, how would you figure out how much to extend for a sloping back? Ooh, that might be hard to just answer with just a question like that. I don't know. Do you guys have a we're turning into a fitting
A
day.
sloping back, does she mean like is it posture related or is that a style that I'm not getting?
I would assume it's posture related. Kathleen, if you're still here.
Start with it. If it's a lot, start with an inch. If it's only a little, start with a half an inch. When it comes to balance, it's always at least a half an inch. You never adjust a balance by a quarter inch. It can get lost, too easily lost over like the length of the seam. So I usually say it was if it looks like it need only a little bit. If there's a little bit of a drag, it's a half an inch. If it's very noticeable, it's an inch. If it's a hell of a lot, it's an inch and a half. Think of it that kind of way. And always go up in increments of at least a half an inch each time. But yeah, if you're like stooping right over, then and you can see a quite considerable drag coming through it, then yeah, get into you stick an inch and a half in there, and you'll start to see a difference. Like really, when you're looking for like you want to be in a position of it's a lot easier to work out if you've got too much balance and how much to get rid of than if you don't have enough. So like if you've got too much balance in the back of, I would say, any garment, obviously I'm a tailoring specialist, but it's a looseness in the back waist. That's where it actually gathers and pulls. So when it comes to balance, always pin it out of the back waist. There is a temptation to do it across the shoulders or between the two shoulder points. But the problem with it there is that you're pinning out both shoulder slope. So it could be a shoulder slope issue along with balance. So you're sort of taking the two up into one. So always pin balance out across the waist, and then for shoulder slopes, do that at the armholes.
Awesome. Those are the main questions that came in, and Kathleen might not be still with us, but hopefully she'll be able to check back and see that. So I actually had a question for you, Rory. For those books that you buy, you put them up for sale on is that just on your website? Did I miss that?
No, we do. We put up digital copies. Yeah, we have it on our website. So it's the Handcraft Tailor Academy, and it's in the bookstore. So it's to make the book affordable. We are charging something.
Yeah.
The books are out of print, but we invest the money in buying more books. But we'll never be at a point where we're actually making money off sales. I just have a fascination with buying very old rare books, and old rare books are always really expensive. I really like reading old books as well because you get an insight into the past. Like the idea of ready to wear clothing. Like I know Alexander was talking a bit about it there, and trying to getting these patterns to fit the bodies and that. Like I've read in books. Like the idea of going and buying a dress, or a suit off the rack, it's a very new idea. Like it's only 100 years old, if it's even that. It was between the First and Second World War where you could actually go in and buy a dress that was ready made. Before that, you went to a dressmaker. A man went to a person went to a tailor. And, you know, these were usually husband and wife teams. You know, it wasn't unusual for men to be like straight men to be dressmakers, and their wives and their family, everybody worked in the one business. But if you get those old books, like anything around, and there's a book I have, it's written around 1910. And in that book, it says women's dresses will never be available off the rack. That you know, the women's figures, there's just too many variations. Like, how could we possibly ever, you know, standardize that, you know? And like that's why you get more, you know, in women's shopping. Like, women are more brand loyal than men are, and it has to do with fitting models. Like, you know, if you go into if you buy Gap jeans and you just find the Gap jeans fit you well, and you go then you try, you know, you want to try like I don't know, like French Connection. You go to French Connection, you try their jeans on, you're like, oh, they just don't really fit me as well. It actually has to do more with the fitting model that is closer to your sort of size or style. Like, there's very little standardization in fashion. It used to be standardized. I think it was back in the 70s. Women's wear was standardized. There was a standardized system that was recognized sort of globally, and everybody followed this. The only reason I know about this, I used to live with a fashion designer who was doing some research into it about the standardization of women's sizing, and she was a pattern cutter, a technical designer. She was telling me all about it, and but I think that's the great thing now with that there is no standardization. That because if we were standardized across the board, you wouldn't have the variety and fit and style and that.
I will correct you there. There is still a standardization in the high street going, but it's very standardized from area to area. Like UK has their measurements, Europe has theirs, depending on where you are. But I will also say, and this is from experience working within different brands, and like you said, the different female bodies. I've worked in a very high street brand for young women, and one that was for older women. The measurements of the fit models were more or less exactly the same. The bodies completely different, and the final garments completely different, because obviously a young body, even if the chest has one measurement, they're kind of higher up and in a different position than if you're older. So I think that's why we're getting all of these different, in a way, for the consumer, different sizes out there. They might be based on the same thing, but then if you're in your brand have one consumer, the body will be so different to the other. Like in tailoring, in a sense. It's like taking it a bit like crazy.
Yeah, like I'll do, like when I finish a coat or a jacket, you know, the waist is 4 inches bigger on the body. Like somebody else would be like, that's crazy, like 4 inches. Like I do it at 3, and you know, if you go into the high street and you go to buy a suit off the rack, I would say the jackets are only maybe 2.5 inches over, like because they want you know, if you're buying a suit in the high street, they want if you go up an inch, you got to go buy a new suit. Whereas like tailors are like, no, I want to be able to, I want to be able to gain a few pounds and still be able to wear the same garment. Like you're the lightest you're going to be at the end of the summer, and you're the heaviest you're going to be at the end of the winter. And in bespoke tailoring, like we're thinking about year-round garments. You're just like, you know, like, and you're always, you know, in bespoke, I'm sure like Alexandria experiences this as well. It's you're never making for the season that you're in. So like when it's the depths of winter, you're making spring, summer clothing. And when you're in the middle of summer, you're making overcoats that are going to be worn that Christmas. You know, so we're always working, we're never working in the season that we're in. So the figure that we're dealing with, and we're making it custom, you know, if I'm meeting a guy at the end of the summer or in the middle of the summer, and you know, he wants something for the following, you know, winter, you know, autumn, winter, I have to account with the fact that he's actually probably going to gain a few more pounds than he is now. Like the assumption is always in tailoring is your client's going to size up. He's never ever going to lose weight. I've seen guys like gain weight exponentially quickly once it gets cold, particularly in New York. Like how easy it is to put on 2 or 3 inches in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah. We did have a question come in from our VIP. How do you take head measurements since heads can vary in size? Does anyone work with hats?
Are we talking about the head units, maybe? Is that what he's referring to?
Stacy, she's still here, isn't she? Yeah. Do you want to clarify your question?
Yes, I was just curious on the head units on how how
Okay.
do you accurately take that measurement so that you're
Yes,
getting the best results?
sure. So it's the full height, and this is actually the reason why head units work so well is because when you go to measure somebody's height, no matter how bad their posture is, they always straighten up. So when somebody wants to get their height taken, they always want to come out the tallest that they are. And never ever ask a man how tall he is. I have a brother who's convinced he's 5'11" and he's 5'8.5". So thinking now he might think he's 5'10" since last time we spoke. But how you do it is you take the full height. So I work in inches. So you're talking like 6 feet is 72 inches. So you take the full height from the crown of the head down to the flat of the foot, and then you divide it by 8. So 8 and the 72 is 9, so you get 9 inches. So then if I wanted to work out what my natural waist would be on a figure that's 6 feet tall, it's 2 head units. So that's 18. So it's 18 inches down. Then if I wanted a coat, like a coat length, it'd be like 3.5 head units, like minus a half an inch, which works out to be roughly about 31 or so. And then you can just you can say, well, maybe like whenever I'm dealing with figures that are corpulent or portly or, like big guys, like fat men, that's like a lot of my business. We want to create the illusion of a waist. So I'll have a system then where I'll come down, I'll come down 2 head units to find, the natural waistline or the waistline. And then I come back up an inch and a half. So I come down to 18 and come up an inch and a half, and I draw a line, and that's my styled waistline. So that's where I'm going to put the suppression and all to create the illusion of the waist. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pull the waist in just below the rib cage before the first roll of fat as it hits the belly. And that's how I use it. And then for the sleeve length, I'd use 2 head units to find the forearm sleeve seam. In women's wear, I think if I remember rightly, it's 2 head units plus an inch and a quarter, but that's based off my draft, so that could be different. I think for the ladies' coat, generally I use I think it's 3.25 head units. I use for my coat lengths for that as well. But again, those are styling details. So yeah, it actually does work. I found it. I have it now written into my system that just to do away with. Like the measurements I would take is the height, the neck, the chest, the waist, the seat, side seam, inside leg, and half back. That's it. I don't bother with shoulder width measurements. Like I work at my shoulder width based off my half back, and then it's drop after that. So it's like whatever when you're gonna go, draft in a system. Like anyone I'm sure there's a lot of people here who have books at home where you want to draft a coat or a pair of trousers, and you start putting your measurements into the system, and it doesn't work. And the reason for it is you actually have to use the measurements that's given with the draft in the book. So whatever measurements there are to create a block pattern, and then from there you can and then from there you can sort of alter the pattern to sort of fit yourself. Whereas the book that I've written, it's actually to do with drops. So the idea is that the drop is the difference between the waist and the chest and the waist. So you drop from 40 inches down to 34 inches, from the waist down to the chest, and then it's from waist down to seat on the trousers. So actually, what you do is you select the drop. So you're just like, okay, this guy's a 3-inch drop. So we go to that draft, and then you plug the measurements in for your drop and then your height into it, and then you'll get a draft then is proportionate in depth for the person's height and proportionate in widths based on the chest measurement and the difference between the chest and the waist.
Awesome. I know Julie just joined us. I don't know if she's struggling, but to get her video on. And we are also at time. But if Julie wanted to jump on real fast and say hi, I wanted to make sure she had the opportunity. There she is. Hello.
Yeah. Hi, I am struggling a little bit. I don't know why I keep freezing, but I'm here. Hi.
Welcome. Do you want to just introduce yourself real fast to everybody?
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Julie DiMaggio, a fashion designer, college fashion educator. I was teaching this week about some fabrics, and yeah, happy to be here. Nice to see everybody.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I do know we are at time. I don't want to keep you speakers over if I don't have to, but we can also keep the Zoom room open and keep chatting if you would like. I am open. Okay. Well, it sounds like we're probably ready to say our goodbyes and everything. So I just wanted to thank you all so much for joining us. I always have so much fun speaking with other people and hearing other people's craft and all their experiences. And I'm going to have to rewatch this myself so I can get Rory's book recommendations because I froze through like half of them. So, but I also have those. So I want to thank you all so much, and I look forward to seeing you guys hopefully at another summit. And remember, if you guys still have questions for our speakers, continue to put them in the comments and in the community as well. That way you can get the points to get onto the
Oh no, we've frozen again.
We have frozen again.
leadership
Oh,
board. And we will be
Christina.
drawing those prizes on Monday at noon. That you get the extra. Oh, did I freeze?
You did. Carry on. We got you
Did I
back. We
freeze?
got you back.
Oh, no.
Am I back yet?
You're back now,
Did I
yeah.
freeze? Okay. I probably froze a while ago, huh?
It wasn't too bad.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's always one day I will get my internet fixed, at least this year, or at least today we were able to live stream. That was a fun, frustrating adventure yesterday. So awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And well
Yeah.
done, Christina. You've made it to the end. Proud of you.
Yes,
You've
for sure.
survived.
Yes, and it was a wonderful week for sure.
Amazing. Love to hear it. It was lovely meeting you all virtually as well. So thank you everyone for your time.
Yeah, you too.